Nahanni National Park Reserve in the Danko region, the Northwest Territories in Canada, is an approximately 311 miles, 500 kilometers west of Yellowknife, kind of a big settlement there. It's a protected portion of this like gigantic swath of wilderness land. The centerpiece of it is the South Nahanni River. It's runs all the way up, and it's got a bunch of offshoots that we're going to talk about today. But it's become known as the Valley of Headless Men because the many disappearances and corpses found around the valley.
Oh.
This is Country Roads Creeps.
Oh, okay. This sounds terrible.
Yeah. Do you remember when I told you I was like, I think it'll probably be like a short episode?
Yeah.
I found more information on it than I thought that I was going to, and it's just nuts stories. So,
okay.
Anything you want to say before I start? Other than follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Country Roads Creeps.
I found my Cryptid Bash shirt. I haven't seen this in forever.
Cool. Well, since last year.
Well, I've seen it since last year, but...
You know what I realized, though? Last year we did Cryptid Extravaganza every week in October. And this year,
Not happening.
I didn't even talk about it.
No.
So not happening because you had a baby.
Yeah, it was not even an option at all.
Yeah. So maybe next year.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe we'll do... I don't know. I was going to come up with some kind of joke for like next year in the spring or something, but we'll do like a President's Day special, and it'll just be presidential assassination episodes.
No, we're not doing that.
So, listen. So in the Nahanni Valley or the Nahanni National Park Reserve, whatever they, I don't think they really call it National Park in Canada, but I'll be referring to it as such.
The counterpart of our national parks.
Yeah.
Okay.
The worst version because it's Canadian. So, there's 4 canyons that are kind of noteworthy that are lining or I guess surround the Nahanni River, and they are, check this out, they're 3,300 foot tall on either side. So,
okay.
The picture like what's the canyon that we have? The big one?
Grand Canyon? Shade.
Grand one. But way bigger and scarier. So
how tall is the Grand Canyon?
It's way shorter. It's only like 500 feet or something. I made that up. I completely made that up. I don't know. I don't care about the Grand Canyon.
I'm going to look.
So until we do the Grand Canyon episode.
It's my turn to ask you obscure questions you don't know the answer to in the middle of your episode.
Hang on to that thought when we get to the dollar amounts.
Okay.
Listen, so they are aptly named.
The Grand Canyon is 6,804 feet.
That's stupid. I'm about to get into some of this that it's the way the landscape is a little more daunting, I think, than like the Grand Canyon in certain parts.
Mm-hmm.
And also in other parts, maybe not. But the canyons are called first, second, third, and fourth.
Okay.
So
creative.
And it's pretty much just whitewater river. So the name, the Nahanni, comes from the indigenous Dene language for the area, Naha Dehe, which means river of the land of the Naha people. And the park was among the world's first 4 natural heritage locations to be inscribed in the World Heritage Sites by UNESCO in 1978 because of the picturesque stuff like the rivers and the canyons and the waterfalls.
Mm-hmm.
So the central thing of this wildlife area is the South Nahanni River. It runs the length of the park, like up and down, and begins near Moose Ponds and ends where it meets the Liard River near Nahanni Butte. It's Butte. Do you know how to say that word?
I was going to say Butte, but I don't know.
Butte.
But?
I don't know. I was trying not to say but because I'd laugh.
I don't know.
South Nahanni is a rare example of an antecedent river. The mountains rose slowly enough and the river was powerful enough that it maintained its course over its history. So it has approximately the same path that it did when it formed like, I don't know, 1,000,000 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe that the Earth is even that old.
Yeah.
So, they are the 4 main canyons that line the river are named by the prospectors that showed up, and they just called them first, second, third, and fourth. Kind of stupid. But they just numbered them. And so the 4th canyon, also called Painted Canyon or 5 Mile Canyon due to the length, begins at Virginia Falls and was created as the falls eroded the limestone surrounding the river and working their way upstream. The 3rd canyon runs through Funeral Range, and because the walls are composed of the strata and the shale and the sandstone and limestone, it's got all these long slopes instead of like a steep flat wall like some of the lower canyons. The 2nd one is kind of starts at this place they call Big Bend, which is a 45-degree turn. So it marks the end of the 3rd canyon, beginning of the 2nd. And it runs through Headless Range. Wonder why they call it that.
Headless Range.
Yeah. And then the final canyon begins after Deadman Valley. It's the first, and it has the most high and most vertical walls. And so to kind of picture this for you, because you haven't seen the pictures yet, and I'll post the pictures on our photo stuff. Mm-hmm. It's crazy looking. So it's literally certain parts of it are just there's river at the bottom, and it's straight up and down both sides. So there's literally no way to get out. Like it's just.
Oh, that reminds me of something.
What?
Have you seen this movie? I think it's called The Jungle, and Daniel Radcliffe plays in it.
Nope.
Well, it's based on a true story of this guy. I'll have to look up his name later, maybe at the end, because I can't remember right now. But he went into the jungle on this just expedition or like trip with some other people, and they got stuck in the river and he had to go through a canyon like that, and he couldn't get out because it was just river and then cliffs all the way up.
So it's just, and so the walls go up like 3,300 feet, but the river in some places they say is also thousands of feet deep.
Oh God!
So it's a possibility, and they haven't been able to map and explore all of it because
treacherous.
It's insanely treacherous. Just to get there is treacherous.
Yeah.
To be there is more. So, but they say that, like, I guess what would you say the Grand Canyon is 6,000 feet?
That was the first thing on Google, but there were some differing results as I scrolled down.
Oh, I see.
Hard to say.
So I would say that probably, like they say, the river is almost as equally as deep as the
cliffs are.
So I would say that in certain parts you probably get about a 6,000 foot span, and they don't know. And there's all these caves that have formed because the whole top of North America down to pretty low in the United States was ice at one point. And so when that all receded, it exposed like all of these ice crag caves and stuff that nobody has explored because you can't get up there.
That's crazy.
So they have no idea what
could they hold?
Yeah, they have no idea.
Monsters.
So, well, probably not.
Maybe.
That's how would the monsters get out, but anyway, so that's the first one. It's the biggest and the craziest. It ends near Krause Hot Springs, and it's about 19 miles long. So the river kind of slows down after this, and it braids into a bunch of different places, and it passes through a bunch of different villages and everything. So anyway, the Dene, sometimes called the Slave peoples, have used the lands around Nahanni National Park Reserve for thousands of years. The first human occupation of the area estimated to have occurred 9,000 to 10,000 years ago. And they've found prehistoric human use of the area at like Yohin Lake and a few other sites in the park. But the local oral history contains a bunch of references to the Naha tribes and a mountain-dwelling people, or other mountain-dwelling people, because there's a few other tribes that have used the area, but they're all kind of spooky, and they all have their own like odd folklore for the area, which is I don't like it when you go to an area and the natives are like, hey, we've been here 10,000 years, and it's scary.
Yeah.
But the Naha people were a mountain-dwelling tribe that used to raid settlements in the adjacent lowlands and some of the other tribes. So they're said to have disappeared relatively quickly. Nobody knows what happened to them. So, interesting. First contact with European fur traders occurred in the 18th century, so 1700s. And then that obviously would increase with Mackenzie's exploration of some of the rivers, and he built a trading post at Fort Simpson and Fort Liard. And then Scottish explorers like John MacLeod explored the area. And then the 19th century, most of the Dene families left their nomadic lifestyles and settled into more of the permanent communities around some of these trading posts. So permanent settlements eventually were established in some of the different locations like Fort Simpson, Fort Liard, and Nahanni Butte. Did you say Butte? Butte?
Butte.
What?
Butte.
Butte. So listen.
Listening.
In the late 19th century, some of the Indians, the mountain Indians of the Nahanni region, would travel down the Nahanni River. And this is crazy. In the river, they would have moose skin boats.
What?
And what I found out was that moose skin boat is like they basically thatch like sticks together.
Mm-hmm.
And then they cover the bottom of the boat in moose skin. And then they sail down the river, this whitewater river.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get to the end, they trade all their stuff with these people at the trading post that they went to, and they would dismantle the boats and trade the hides in the boats too, and then they would walk back.
Wow.
So that's kind of crazy.
And trade everything, including the boat.
Yeah.
How'd they get all their stuff back?
What do you mean?
Like, what did they trade for?
Just
whatever they could carry.
I don't know.
I
guess. I have no idea.
Maybe they tied it together and drug it.
Maybe. But so anyway, the stories of the Naha tribes, they inhabited this whole big dangerous landscape, but because it's dangerous and nobody really knew what happened to them, nobody really knows anything about the area, all the legends about them kind of grew into kind of wild stories. But there's a bunch of prospectors that decided that they were going to go to the South Nahanni River or the Flat River and try to look for gold because of the Klondike Gold Rush and things like that. No significant gold was recovered. Legends of haunted valleys and lost gold emerged after the headless corpses of Métis prospectors Willie and Frank McLeod were found in 1908. That is where our story today sort of begins. Except
in 1908.
No. We're going back up a few years.
Okay.
In 1898, there's a group of prospectors that it's 6 people, and they got a bunch of the equipment for gold mining, and they got a bunch of weapons, and they went in search for gold because nobody's ever seen the Nahanni Valley, and they figure there's gold there. They never returned, and their disappearance was a mystery. Not really a notable one because people disappeared in the wilderness all the time. Several years later, a hunter who happened to be in the valley made an unusual find. He found a little camp and declared to the police that there were skeletal remains of the miners. And the strangest thing was that the skeletons were embracing their guns and missing their heads.
What?
The heads themselves, or rather the skulls, because they're decomposed now, were neatly folded at the feet. And the RCMP declared the deaths from exposure and the weird position of the skulls due to animals who had picked away at the bodies. So,
and moved the heads to the feet.
Yeah. So Check this out. You're going to hear this a lot in this episode.
Okay.
The police said they died of exposure or starved to death, and the animals picked away at their bodies. And instead of bite marks and scratch marks and anything eaten being on the body, they just ate the head.
Okay, this sounds like the Dial of Pass those types of explanations that really don't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah. So I'm going to...
Cool.
That one wasn't as notable. The incident at the time, not really widely reported. The only surviving record was a really short note in a Yukon newspaper that didn't even name the victims. So...
That's kind of sad.
Would have been entirely forgotten if not for what happened next. Ooh.
Interesting sound to put in there.
In 1904, prospectors Willie, Frank, and Charlie McLeod. It's spelled McLeod. So I think it's pronounced McLeod or MacLeod, but I'm going to pronounce it McLeod. They're from the Northwest Territories. They decided to go looking for gold in the Nahanni Valley because of how remote and untouched it was. And if there was any gold to be found, mostly unsearched swath of land that the Nahanni Valley is, would be the place to find it. So they go on this long journey using trains, dogs, homemade boats, and eventually find themselves on the Flat River. Ironically named, because it's not flat, like at all. It's rapids for the most part. So at some point they pull off the river to this kind of bank clearing, and they set up camp. Once they get settled in their camp, they go back down in the river and put their gold sluices in there. So you know what a sluice is?
It's like a sieve, kind of, that helps them sort the gold out from the
it's more like a box.
I saw it on Gold Rush. Is that the TV show?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So not like the panning for gold stuff. It's like an actual box they put in the river.
Yeah.
And then they will shovel sediment into the sluice, and the sediment flows down, and then all of the gold and stuff will be caught in a filter, basically.
Yeah.
So right away they find gold, and they know that there's all kind of gold in this river. So all day and all night they're collecting gold, and the next day they do the same thing until all their containers are completely filled to the brim. And they decide they'll pack up, turn all this gold in, make some money, and then they'll come back out here and they'll do it again. Easy. So they pack up, they load everything up, they get it back on the Flat River, and early on into their journey back home, the boat capsizes and it breaks apart in the rapids. So the boat completely sinks, or what's left of it, I guess, and all their supplies sink along with all their gold. But they were able to grab a couple things, including their rifle, some lumber, some of their mining supplies, and they were swimming it to shore. Devastating. So they decide, hey, this sucks.
Yeah.
But we still got some of our stuff. And we know the river is chock full of gold, so let's go back. Since we're still here, we'll get more gold.
Again.
And we'll go back home. So they fashioned another boat out of what was left and some lumber they saved and cut down the trees. And they go back, they set up camp, set up their sluice, but this time they didn't find any gold.
Well, that's disappointing.
Safe to say this is their worst day ever?
Yeah.
So far.
So far?
Yeah.
They capsized, lost everything, didn't recover, and it's not over yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
They decide, we're just going to go back home, regroup, make the journey again with more supplies, and we'll be more prepared. At least now we know what to expect. So as soon as they get back home, the two younger brothers, Willie and Frank, start talking about how they want to go back. They know there's gold out there, and it's not a question. So sure, we didn't find it the second time, but we know it's there. We can definitely get some. Quit trying to peek in my notes.
I can't even see from here.
Charlie decided it wasn't worth the risk this time. And, the boat flipped over and everything. And for months, Willie and Frank are deciding that that we're going to prepare and we're going to go back for this trip. And Charlie's deciding he's going to stay home. So in 1905, Willie and Frank, along with their friend Robert Weir, make a journey back into the valley. And they didn't tell anyone how long they would be gone, just we'll be back eventually, basically. So weeks and even months go by without any word, and Charlie wasn't all that concerned because it takes a while to get there. Maybe they're trying to take it slow, be more careful. He knew there's a lot of gold out there, so maybe they found a big deposit and decided to stay out there through the summer and maybe the next year even. And because he wasn't concerned, neither was anybody else. Makes sense. So more than a year later, still no word, and still Charlie maintained that there was nothing to be worried about. I'm sure they just struck it rich, and they're just killing it. And so nothing bad could have happened. We'll definitely see them in a few months. And a whole other year goes by, still no word. So they've been out there, I believe it was like 2 years at this point, a little over 2 years, and nobody's heard from them. So Charlie at this point is like, all right, I got to go check, see like what's going on. He gets 4 other people from his town, and they travel back and they check on these guys. So this search party, after the long journey into the valley, they get on a flat river, they make their way upstream, looking out on both sides for some kind of sign that these brothers are alive, or at least they've been here. And they don't see any kind of sign. They made their way up what's kind of the beginning of Flat River, because they're coming from the south, so they're going upriver, and then it kind of cuts down, and they're turning onto the South Nahanni River now. So they turn on the South Nahanni River, and they're scanning both sides, looking anywhere for some kind of sign for the brothers. And suddenly the river takes that very sharp turn that they call the Big Bend, and it puts you into that 10-mile stretch called Second Canyon.
Where you can't get out.
Yeah, you can't get out of this one. And so just to reiterate, the canyons in some parts, like there's not really any shoreline at all. So it's pretty much just walls of canyon butt up right against the river. It's kind of crazy. And there's like the cave systems, thousands of feet deep, thousands of feet up. They're totally unexplored. Like it almost gives you the sense that like you're being watched because you don't know what's in them. And then also like because the walls of the canyon are so high, it actually blocks the sunlight from getting into the river.
Wow.
And so it's you get into this,
that's scary,
the Big Bend, and then it gets dark. And there's caves everywhere, and it's just no good. Very odd atmosphere to be in when you know that like, hey, it's noon and the sun is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so right at the end when they're about to get out of Second Canyon, they notice a little tent set on a little piece of shore, and they head over there and they get ashore. And while they're looking around, they see this tent and some supplies, and they notice a body lying on the ground outside the tent.
Oh, no.
And immediately, they notice the body's missing its head, and the clothes are charred, like they've been burned, and the body was reaching with its right arm, and right outside the reach of the arm was a rifle. So they go around the backside of the tent, and there's another pretty severely decomposed body, sort of half in and half out of the tent, and they discover it's also missing its head. So the search party...
Was that one charred too, did it say?
Yeah, it didn't say. But search party starts looking around, hoping to find the heads, figure out who these 2 guys are. And I don't think they ever found the heads. They found some possibly identifying things in the pockets, and it would confirm that those 2 guys were Charlie's brothers. And the third guy, Robert Weir, was nowhere to be found. I don't think he was ever actually officially found. But a little further down the river, a partial skeleton was found months later, but it was never confirmed actually to be Robert Weir. So there was a strange carving found in a tree nearby that just reads, "We have found a fine prospect," which you'd think would indicate that Willie and Frank had found a pretty large deposit of gold, but there wasn't actually any gold to be found on them or in the campsite or any nearby. And so the search party left the valley. They got in touch with the mounted police and went back to the site to investigate, and ultimately came to the conclusion that all the 3 men starved to death and that they died. After they died, the animals came in, which is why the heads were missing, but there weren't any other bite marks on the body parts. Nothing else was eaten.
How did the search party make it out? Okay.
You take the river.
More prepared for it? Like the long stretch where you can't get out, they just had enough stuff to get through?
Yeah, I guess so. But, I mean, it's not really like yeah, they're more prepared, but they went there, and they got there, and they realized these guys are dead, and so they left.
Okay.
The people that stay for a while, bad things happen to them.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha. This is scary.
So it wasn't, like there's no bite marks on the bodies. Heads are missing, but they say they starved to death, and they died. And the animals came in and ate the dead bodies, but just the heads. And that still doesn't explain why Robert was found so far away. So Charlie didn't believe this story at all, obviously. Yeah. He believed they had been attacked by native tribes in the area, but the police didn't buy that story and kept with their version of events that it was an accident and animals got to them after they starved to death. Naturally, when they got home, that story got picked up by the news and people were going crazy. It actually made like national headlines for a little bit. that, headless brothers found in untouched Canadian wilderness. So naturally, people were divided on the story. Some believe that the skeleton was not Robert Weir and that he killed the brothers and made off with all their gold. Some believe that they were all attacked by natives and decapitated. Some believe that they were attacked by some kind of creature, not necessarily an animal. But pretty much everyone is terrified of that stretch of the canyon, and it was eventually known as Headless Valley. So even though there was obvious gold deposits in the Nahanni Valley, people were too scared to go looking for it until 8 years later, in 1913, when Martin Jorgensen decided he wasn't going to let folklore and spook tales scare him off.
He wanted the gold.
Obviously the gold prospect of a lifetime. So he goes by himself
Oh, God.
through Nahanni Valley, through Flat River, and he finds a spot about 70 miles off from where Headless Valley is, and actually built a little one-room shack and operated out of it. He was going to stay through the winter, and the plan was to meet up with his partners in the spring and summer. But when he got there, he set up his sluices and actually found a lot of gold pretty much immediately, kind of like the McLeod brothers on the first trip that they did. And he sent word back to his partners, and they were excited to meet up with him in the summer to see how much there was. And so they went up to meet Martin, and he never showed up. So several days go by, and he never shows up, and they decide, we got to go in and find him. So they made their way up Flat River into Nahanni Valley, roughly to the spot where he said he was going to be staying. They actually found his cabin, rather what was left of it. It was completely destroyed, burned to the ground, and next to it was the burned up remains of Martin, but headless again. So the police come again, and surprise, surprise, they don't connect the headless Martin Jorgensen corpse to the McLeod brothers, even though they're all headless and it's a similar area and similar circumstances. So the police said it's totally separate, and he died for some reason, probably a cabin fire, and animals took parts of him, which is why his skull is missing, and his head was never discovered. And also, all the gold was missing, and there's no gold anywhere nearby. So when his death hit the news, the public went crazy. If there's a killer on the loose, there's creatures, something is in the wilderness that we don't know about. And more prospectors come in. John O'Brien and his partner said, despite all of those stories, we're not scared. There's gold to be had, and we're going to go get it. We're going to be rich. So they set up a camp near where the McLeod brothers were found. And John tells his partner one night he's going to go check all their traps along the river and be gone maybe 8 or 9 days. So guess what?
Who was this that was going to check the traps?
John O'Brien.
Okay.
So guess what? 8 or 9 days go by, and he never shows up. His partner decides he has to go out looking for him. Now, there's another gold prospector who was also kind of in the area, and he connects with him. They go looking for him, and they're walking the river. They try to find John. They find his frozen body, but the positioning was odd. He was placed in front of an obviously previous lit campfire. He wasn't hunched over like he was trying to warm up or anything, like he was hurt. It was almost like he was just sitting near a fire, enjoying a fire, no signs of discomfort or anything. He was even holding a matchbook in his hands. But something caused him to freeze.
That's weird.
Actually, witnesses say it looked like something caused him to be flash frozen in seconds. So the police came, and guess what they said this time?
What?
Hey, this is weird, but he just froze to death. That's an accident.
Okay.
So in 1926, there's a hunting party, which included May Lafferty, also called Annie. And she was described as kind of strange or neurotic. They were camping out in the valley near Flat River, and they all go to sleep. And Annie is not in the camp. So they go off looking for her, and nowhere nearby, she just disappeared. So they spend the rest of the day looking for her, and they spread out the search, and they picked up a trail. From what I could read, they found footprints from her moccasins, and they started to find shredded pieces of clothing hanging on branches and stuff. It said almost like she deliberately placed them, so I'm not sure if they were like tied onto branches, marking her trail or something, but it's just weird. Anyway, the trail ends at a cliff face or like a really steep mountain incline or something. And the search party is like, surely she didn't scale this mountain. But they followed, like winding up and down this mountain on this little path that they could get. And they searched for 4 more days and never found her. So eventually they leave the valley. They tell police. They go search for her. Just a disappeared missing person. but they never found her. And so months later, this guy named Charlie, who was just out near Flat River at the same time that this hunting party was, he, like, not connected to them at all. He just happened to be in the area, but he knew that they were there. He could hear them, like they were kind of close by. He overheard someone talking about a hunting party, a member of a hunting party, a woman in particular, going missing. And when he heard that, he's like, I got to tell the police what I witnessed that night on Flat River. So he goes to the police. He told them that he was near a hunting party. He could hear them. He knew they were there. He went to bed and woke up when he heard the sound of rocks falling into the river next to his camp. And he sits up, and it's obviously dark. He can't see anything, but there's a little bit of moonlight. And he starts to hear these rocks hitting the water again. So he's looking around, trying to like scan what little he could see. And illuminated in the moonlight, a little ways away, he sees a naked woman, pale, running on all fours up the mountainside.
Stop. That's so scary.
So that's what he heard, knocking, her hands and feet were knocking rocks off the mountainside into the water.
Ooh, that gave me chills.
And what he said the most memorable part was when she would stop and look around like an animal, and then continue crawling up or running on all fours, knocking more rocks in the river. That's the best way he could describe it, was like an animal. And he said her face had a rictus grin. Do you know what that is?
I don't like that description. Rictus, is that like
a rictus grin? Is, I had to look this word up because I've never heard it before. A rictus grin is, it's like a spasm of the face that makes it look like you're grinning.
It makes me think of like,
but it's
rigor mortis.
It's a response to like extreme fear.
Ew.
Or like extreme shock, but your face spasms. It makes you look like you're grinning. And she had that, and she had wide eyes.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, crazy.
Ew.
So the police dismissed the story.
Why?
Never investigated it due to the fact that nobody could survive naked in the mountains that long. And after the incident, the river where Annie disappeared was renamed May Creek in her memory. I like to give you a nice, fun story as an interlude. As nice and fun as this could possibly be.
Okay.
One of the most fascinating and enigmatic characters known to frequent the Nahanni Valley was a veritable giant of a man known as Yukon Fisher.
Okay.
That's your intro for him. So he was this guy who made his way to the Klondike, and through this really terrible route in British Columbia, and in some Yukon saloon, this guy got into an argument with a bartender and opened his head with a bottle.
Oh, I hate that description.
There was blood all over, recounts Billy Clark, a prospector from the area. Fisher was certain he killed the guy, so he took off into the bush. And for years, he just lived as an outlaw in the wilderness. And he survived in total isolation, avoiding Indians and white men alike. And on rare occasions, the fur-clad giant would hazard a visit to one of the more remote northern trading posts, such as Poolsfield or, like one of these little hole-in-the-wall places, I guess you could call them.
Yeah. And
he would stock up on tea, salt matches, ammunition, and then he would disappear again into the wilderness. And Poolfield, who had more contact with this guy than anybody else pretty much, said that he had developed a sense of a wild animal as a result of his primitive lifestyle. And he could easily tell a moose, a caribou, a bear, and a man apart by the sounds they made walking through the brush.
Okay.
That's neat. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. What do you think so far while I take a sip of this refreshing Polar 100% natural seltzer, raspberry lime flavor?
Not sponsored, but we wish we were.
No sweeteners.
I'm still kind of stuck on the woman running through the mountain on all fours. That's really scary. That's going to be in my brain for a little while.
Yep.
I do not like that.
So let's.
And this really is, I already said it, but a lot of the details in this are very similar to the details of the Dyatlov Pass story, which I'm obsessed with. Because
when are you going to do that episode?
I don't know. It's so daunting.
Yeah, it's a little big
one.
Yeah.
But they were like, clothes were strewn about, and some of them were burned, and things were in trees, and body parts just, none of it made sense. So this reminds me a lot of that.
So there's been a myriad of disappearances, like a lot that aren't that all interesting. One I read was Agnes Hall, who went to the river with some buddies. Their boat motor gave out, and so they went ashore and set up camp, and they started to argue. And Agnes went off, and he was mad. They thought he'd be back when he calmed down. But by the next day, he was nowhere to be found, and they never found a body or anything. There's just a ton of stories like this. Miners, hunters, explorers, whoever would be in the area, they just disappeared. They're never found. Probably never will be. People said it's like the park just swallowed them up whole. So there's all kinds of those, like dozens.
Of just missing people?
Yeah. And when I say dozens, I don't mean like 12. I mean like more than 100. Like there's a lot. Just people being like, oh yeah, this guy, he was a hunter and he disappeared. Nobody found him. Like,
never saw him again.
Or like, there's the entire hunting parties that just like they never found anything of them.
That happens sometimes here in our national parks. Not like parties of people going missing, but just people just disappear.
National parks everywhere, it happens.
Yep.
Hashtag missing 411, am I right?
Yeah.
Anyway, in 1931, Phil Powers from Fort Nelson, people described him as a tough, honest, extremely competent frontiersman. He built himself a cabin at the mouth of Irvine Creek across the Flat River from Old Pot Hot Springs and established a trapline. And some distance beyond the spot where Jorgensen had met his sudden mysterious death, they came upon the first signs of disaster. He found a skeleton of lynxes and foxes caught in traps that were set but never tended to. Further on, at the where the Caribou and the Flat River meet, they came upon the remains of Powers' 22-foot canoe. And finally, they made their way to the mouth of Irvine Creek. They went on foot, and they saw Phil Powers' cabin, or again, what was left of it. Similar to Martin Jorgensen, his cabin had burned to the ground, and among the ashes were fire-blackened bones of Phil Powers. So there's conflicted accounts about the condition of the corpse. Some say that Powers found headless, and his skeleton was clutching a revolver. Others maintain that the trapper's skull was found at his feet. So the RCMP investigators blamed the stovepipe for burning down the cabin, but prospectors have been pretty quick to point out that in the first place, Powers was an experienced prospector who, like, he knows how to build a cabin, so he would know how to build it so that the stovepipe would go through the roof without touching the timbers. And furthermore, if it ignited the roof, the way they build the roofs, the poles and dirt would fall inside and help extinguish it, so it wouldn't completely burn to the ground. So the fire that destroyed Powers' cabin was so intensely hot that it left only the bottom logs and very little of Powers. Moreover, his cache was untouched except that the cans of gasoline that he needed for his powerboat were completely empty. And it was suggested that somebody standing outside the window shot Powers and then burned the cabin down. Doesn't make any sense because it would have to be somebody that knows about gasoline. And if it was these tribes that there's the theory that there's uncontacted tribes in this area, which is, I guess, possible. It's a huge, huge swath of land. You would think that they wouldn't know what gasoline does. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
So it would have to be somebody that knows that gasoline burns.
Yeah. Was his head missing too?
I think so. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm going to say yes.
So, like, if these things, if just one of these things happened, like the guys that went missing on the river, and one of the theories was that the third dude shot him and stole the gold and disappeared. Yeah. If that was the only thing that happened, then yeah, maybe. That would make sense, maybe, that the third guy killed the other two and took the gold. And then the other one's cabin that burned down and his head was missing. Okay, maybe his cabin caught on fire and an animal got him. But when you add all of these together and everyone's heads are missing and none of the stories make sense, it makes you really wonder what's actually going on.
Well, you're in luck because I have more stories.
Yeah.
So sometime after Christmas in 1935, a bush pilot named George C.F. Dalziel flew two trapper partners, Joe Mulholland and Bill Epler to Britnell Lake. It's a body of water deep in the Nahanni Valley, and it's kind of nestled in this place where like all these sheer cliff faces are at. So they never returned. His brother, Joe Mulholland's brother Jack, first noticed that they never showed up at when they were supposed to return in the spring, and a search party was formed, and they ended up hiring Dalziel, the same pilot that originally took them into the valley. He flew them to the area where he originally dropped them off, and the party made pretty ominous discovery. Short distance away stood the remains of a cabin, which, just like the previous cabins of Martin Jorgensen and Phil Powers, burned to the ground. And they searched the vicinity. There's no sign of Epler or Mulholland, and the search party were in fact unable to find any sign of the two men, like at all. So after several days, they left, but other searches would follow. In 1936, a group of hunters that had previously spent the last few weeks camping at Irvine Creek, they were waiting for the ice to thaw. They arrived at the mouth of the Flat River, and kind of where the Flat River and the Nahanni River meets. They found the remains of a campfire that was determined to be only a few days old. And as they went down the South Nahanni River, they came across a number of trees felled by axes. And since Mulholland and Epler were the only other people known to be in the valley at the time, after their disappearance, it was presumed that the campfire and ashes and axe cuttings were probably their last traces. So, following winter, these other two hunters, Al Lewis and Harry Vandal, entered the valley, and they stumbled upon a bunch of camps, little strange camps in the vicinity of Rabbit Kettle Lake. And Lewis described it as a sequence of caches that each included a section of neatly folded tarp, along with various items arranged at the top of them, from empty tobacco cans to, in one case, the leg of a wolf. Almost like ceremonial sounding. But they were spaced randomly miles apart, and seemed especially odd to Lewis that trappers and prospectors are not in the habit of leaving tarps wherever they happen to stop along the way. So the disappearance of the two trappers sparked a bunch of rumors and speculation. Ultimately, there's no further sign of them, and they were simply another two people that were swallowed up by the valley. In 1945, Walter J. Tooley made a prospecting expedition to the Nahanni Valley with two of his partners, and it was immediately cut short. They found a badly decomposed body of a man lying in a sleeping bag with a severed head, and the RCMP determined that the remains were 40-year-old French-Canadian prospector named Ernest Savard that was well known in the Northwest Territories trading posts, and the cause of death, they suggested, was hunger made him tired, so he crawled into his sleeping bag and died. And animals couldn't get to the rest of the body, so they gnawed away at his head.
I don't know about
Except for that doesn't make any sense because bears have been routinely known to tear into tents and sleeping bags and stuff.
A sleeping bag's not going to hold back an animal.
Yeah. So
fabric.
Yeah. In the autumn of 1946, prospector Frank Henderson returned to civilization from the wilderness of the Nahanni Valley with a poke containing 30 ounces of gold and a chilling tale.
That's a lot.
So, ask me how much it is.
How much is it?
So 30 ounces at today's current price, I checked 2 days ago. Gold per ounce is $26.57 and change. $2,657 per ounce. Yeah. And select some change. Per ounce would be the equivalent of $79,710.
Oh my gosh.
So
he's mega rich.
Here's what I'm saying is that the price of gold has like fluctuated over time, and not really fluctuated, more like just it goes up. So that's pretty interesting. But what it gets tied to quite a bit is because it's an actual like physical thing that you can get. The price routinely goes up when there's large pieces of inflation. So like the price of gold skyrocketed whenever they went off of the gold standard, because now you're on an oil dollar and it's completely fake. And so gold being tangible, all this inflation has led to the price of gold in current dollars being insanely high. So if you just extrapolated back and said like, hey, at this point in time in 1946, the price was roughly this, like a similar amount of money, like their equivalent of $2,600, it'd be the equivalent of $1,335,000.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
So he was Richie Rich.
Well, he was the nephew of Robert Henderson, one of the three co-discoverers that had launched the Klondike Gold Rush. Spent most of his life in the Canadian wilderness of digging for gold. But despite being a seasoned frontiersman, he was pretty shaken by his story. He recounted his story to Nahanni Valley journalist George Murray of Fort St. John. And Henderson explained he planned to prospect with his longtime partner John Patterson at Watson Lake, situated near the Liard River, a short distance from the lower post in British Columbia. This Patterson guy also considerable backcountry experience, and he was known by all kinds of traders in Vancouver, Calgary. They're good, right? They planned to meet at Virginia Falls in the spring of 46, and they would travel down to Watson Lake together. And Henderson came to the Northwest Territories traveling by dog sled, accompanied by 5 First Nations guides, while Patterson was coming from the east through Mackenzie River. They kind of had this custom together when they went places that they would leave tree carvings so that whoever came after that would, like if one of them got there sooner, then they would know that this is the way they went. So Henderson arrived to the meeting spot first, and when Patterson didn't arrive, he left his message on a tree, traveled into the valley, and assumed Patterson was delayed for some reason. The first night in the valley, Henderson was awoken by strange wailing sounds. And they made this camp on this little rock outcropping about half mile up from the river.
When you said wailing, I thought my brain envisioned whale, like W-H.
No, more like...
But then I realized you meant W-A-I-L.
Yeah, more like painful screaming. Yeah.
I was like, oh, whale noises in the woods? Interesting.
So they have this camp on a rock outcropping about a half mile up from the river, and the strange sounds seem to be coming from the riverbed. So he found his native companions, his guides. They were already awake, terrified, and they motioned for him to stay down, don't make any noise, or don't move. They already frantically put out the fire and covered the fireplace with a pot. And the wailing continued for several hours, and when it finally stopped, it took some effort for Henderson to get his companions to provide some kind of explanation. And all he could glean from the reluctant natives was that they had seen white giants. Creepy, right?
Yeah.
Henderson said whatever the source, he would never forget the chilling sounds, unlike the sound of any animal he had ever encountered.
What could that have been?
They say there are white giants or white beings that go through the Nahanni Valley and kill people. His guides obviously spooked, so they detoured immediately out of the valley to the east rather than continuing down the South Nahanni River. Henderson also intended to meet with Patterson on the path towards the meeting place. So Henderson came across this message from Patterson carved into a tree at one of the points along the path, indicating he had entered Nahanni Valley. So Henderson waited for him to go. Henderson wanted to go back into Nahanni Valley and find him, but the natives refused. Patterson failed to meet up with him anywhere along the Liard River, and he never showed by August. So Henderson decided he needed to go back into Nahanni Valley and search for him, but still his native companions refused to re-enter the area. So eventually Henderson went by himself, and he spent the rest of the season alone searching for some kind of sign of his partner. And he never encountered the white figures that had spooked his native companions, But he said, all summer I moved with utmost caution, mostly at night. No trace of Patterson was ever found.
Pretty scary.
Yeah. Author Pierre Bearton wrote, Frank Henderson himself, a man who perhaps has good reason to not want too many people rushing into the valley, was quoted as saying on his return from the area last fall, there is absolutely no denying the sinister atmosphere of that whole valley. Most accounts of the curse of the Nahanni Valley end with the tale of Ukrainian trapper John Shebak, who bizarrely starved to death despite being an experienced hunter, and his body was found less than a mile upriver from a well-stocked cabin. His corpse was found mutilated. Quote, it was just a mess. And when the RCMP carried out their investigation, they said scraps of clothing and bones had been gnawed and dragged around. Apparently, by the very wildlife that the area was teeming with, Shebak was unable to catch any. So a journal was found near his corpse. Most of it was unreadable due to exposure, but authorities were able to make out the final entry dated February 3rd, 1946, which just said that this was the 43rd day since Shebak had last eaten, which is a pretty unbelievable claim in and of itself. So there's been a bunch more disappearances that aren't really noteworthy. Like I said, there's dozens and dozens and dozens. But since the 40s and 50s, they happened a little bit less and less. Most people are scared off of exploring because of the stories. Mm-hmm. Many of the areas of the park have been closed off, the government says, because they're trying to protect those sections of the park from people destroying it. But people believe that they're trying to protect the people who might enter there from whatever is causing all the horrific events. There's been dozens and dozens, like I said, disappearances that are just people go in and they never come out. So that's the end of my notes. What do you think?
How did you find out about this?
I saw like a YouTube short or something. They said something about it's like the scariest place in Canada.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And so I started looking into it. I found this forum that had like somebody had like all these stories listed, and I saw some YouTube videos where people were saying some of the stories, and it's just very scary. And it fits with our podcast, so hello.
Good choice. Good topic. That's pretty unsettling.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Have that many people go missing.
I told you it was scary. Yeah.
Yeah, and the police explanations don't really make sense.
Yeah, the police, I saw somebody in one of these forums saying that the police are either totally inept or they're trying to lie either to the public or to themselves about what it could be. So either they're just saying that they starved to death so that that's the official narrative and they don't have to admit that there might be something out there that they can't explain and not worry the public as much, or they're just complete, like, just don't care, don't want to do their jobs.
Yeah.
So both possibilities.
We'll have that.
But yeah, what do you think? Pretty neat.
I don't know if neat is the word. Pretty terrifying.
Yeah, pretty terrifying. Not a fan.
Definitely won't be exploring the Canadian wilderness anytime soon.
I wonder what it is though, because like I guess it could be natives. Here's the thing: is that like natives are, if they're uncontacted tribes, very leery of outsiders.
Well, as you would be.
Right. I mean, you know, you've seen the.
You're trying to protect yourself and your people.
North Sentinel Island, where people have gone and there's uncontacted tribes and they just shoot them full of arrows.
Yeah. Leave them alone. Let them be.
Uncontacted tribes in the Amazon that like they've never seen, or really, well, they've never contacted like white people. Mm-hmm. People have gone in and like immediately they're hostile towards them, and they know like the thing is like they've lived in the jungle for forever, so their sense of smell is totally different than yours. Like we're bombarded with like scents and lotions and everything all day long, and so we can't smell any of it, but they can smell you from like a mile off.
Yeah,
you're in the jungle, and
just leave them alone. Let them live.
Yeah, for real. So it's
speaking of jungle, I want to go back to that movie I was telling you about earlier because the cave or the cavern walls reminded me of it.
Yeah.
So I looked up the details. It's called Jungle, not The Jungle, just Jungle. Daniel Radcliffe is in it. But the true story that it's based on, I had to remind myself of these details, was this guy named Yossi Ginsburg. And he was traveling, just like kind of backpacking around, just visiting different places. And when he was in Bolivia, he met this guy named Marcus and another guy named Kevin, I believe. And so they run into this dude named Carl who says he'll take him out into the jungle and they're going to go try to find a tribe and see them. And I don't really know what the point of that was. I guess just to explore an adventure. And so when they're in the jungle, one of the guys is not doing very well, but the other, so he has to turn back and Carl's going to take him back, but the other two wanted to keep going. So Yossi keeps going and they get separated and he gets stuck on the river. And it's just like this crazy story of survival. And that podcast I like that I've mentioned before, Against the Odds, does a really, really good episode about Yossi and his story.
Good.
So everybody check that out. Also, something else I want to talk about, but it's completely unrelated to this. So is there more you want to say about your episode?
Yeah, it's, like I said, I would just wonder what it is. If it's uncontacted tribes or if it's animals or if there's something in there that we don't know about, like people have said there's possibility for Sasquatch. People have said that there's, I don't know, like maybe like, I have no idea. It just, I wonder what it is. Because it's totally unexplained. And it could be different things like the people that were decapitated could be natives in the area. It could be something more sinister. Could be, who knows? And then the stuff that was burned could be like other prospectors in the area that, they show up and find this other gold prospector. And because we know there's other people in the area at the same time. So there could be a lot of stuff going on. It's not necessarily all supernatural, but some of it definitely is like, why would you be decapitated and, no animals came and ate your body? Like, you know what I mean? It's just,
yeah. And there's definitely pieces of it that point to something supernatural.
Yeah.
Like the wailing and the wailing noises and the woman running around on all fours.
Yeah. So, but what was it you were going to say?
Oh, the unrelated thing?
Yeah.
So something cool that West Virginia is doing, you might have seen it, you might not have, but you know how they have the waterfall passport program?
No.
Okay, so there's this thing where you go and see different waterfalls around the state, and as you check them off, you get stuff. Well, now they're doing a paranormal passport. So as you go to the spooky spots around the state and check them off, you can get things like rewards almost.
Like what?
Like posters and stuff sent to you.
Huh.
Merch. So it's kind of neat that, like, if one of the stops was the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, one of the stops is Lake Shawnee. Mm-hmm. So as you go around and travel these places, you can mark them off in your digital passport thing.
Yeah.
And you get like prizes as you visit. I guess it like increases tourism, but that's kind of neat that they're doing a paranormal one.
Yeah.
Spooky one. Maybe we can do some of those.
Yeah, maybe.
Someday. Probably not right now, but
yeah. Anyway, what else is new? Hurricane hit Tampa.
Oh, horrible.
Yeah.
2 hurricanes back to back.
Yeah.
Helene and Milton. Terrible. Terrible, terrible.
I mean, yeah, it's bad. It's just, oh, geez. No good.
There's been a lot of people around town taking up donations to drive down there.
Yeah. I'm always weary of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
like, unless it's like
some of them were like local people that I knew.
Yeah,
we gave some baby supplies to somebody that we actually know personally who's driving a trailer down.
Unless it's somebody like that, or like it's a real, like if it's like a church organization or something, or like some, like.
That's who it was. Someone from our church that was kind of organizing it. I'd be hesitant just to send money out there because you never know how it's used. But
there's all kinds of like GoFundMe stuff that like people are like, oh, we're setting up a GoFundMe and then we're going to send it to whoever. It's like,
definitely donate and help, but just be careful how you do it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people jump on moments like this to scam you.
Yeah.
But they do need help down there.
Northern Lights are here.
Yeah, we saw them last night. What?
I'm such a buzzkill about it.
You are a buzzkill.
I regret even mentioning it, honestly.
Why? It was cool. Like,
it's cool. Here's the thing: is a few months ago it happened, and you can't really see anything. It's like a slight.
But I did see them this time, though.
Hue, and all I mean is like people post their pictures, right? And it's like, oh, look, the sky looks purple, and that's cool. That's cool. Okay, it's cool. But like, it's not.
You're so annoying sometimes.
It's not really the Northern Light. It is. It's not
the same phenomenon.
It's not the neat ribbony ones that you see up way north. So I'm just
okay, but like, how old are we? And this is a couple months ago, and this time is the only time in our lives that this has happened here.
You're correct. Like, I'm not saying it's not cool.
It is cool. It took. I mean, I'm almost 28, and this is the first time I've ever been able to see that. It's neat.
It's cool. It's cool.
And the first time they came around, we went and looked, and we really couldn't see them. But this last time, I could see them like with just my eyes. Yeah. Obviously, they looked better through the camera, but I could actually see it in the sky, and that's something we've never experienced before, and it's neat.
It's cool.
I enjoy in the little things, Shane.
Yeah, I will not.
I enjoy in the small stuff.
All I mean is like I just don't get the like. I don't know the 40 million pictures I see online of people are like, we saw the Northern Lights. It's like, okay, but it's just purple. I get it's cool. They were
purple and green here.
I know, but I'm saying it's
so aggravating.
I want to be the buzzkill about it, and I mean, I don't want to be the buzzkill, but it's like,
don't be. Say, yeah, that was neat. I'm glad I got to see that. Might never see it again.
When people say Northern Lights, the thing that immediately pops into everybody's head is like the cool ribbony ones. And so when they're like, oh, we can see the Northern Lights, it's like, no. Well, no. Like,
boo.
Not that good kind.
That was cool.
It's cool. I'm not saying it's not cool. But
you kind of are.
If we could get some of the good stuff down here, be pretty nice. I will admit, like, you can post as many pictures as you want of the cool stuff.
You can post pictures of whatever you want. Kind of.
I don't know.
Well, I liked them.
They're cool. I liked them.
Neat. And I saw a shooting star last night.
Really?
Yeah.
I saw something the other night at the range that was kind of weird.
What was it?
Like not a shooting star, also not a satellite. Something moving way too fast.
Oh.
Oh, that's cool.
But not a shooting star?
Not a shooting star.
How do you know?
Because shooting stars go straight.
Oh.
And this one went, whoop.
Oh.
And I was like,
Interesting.
That's odd. And satellites go straight. This thing went, whoop. That's me making a curve. So yeah, it's that's cooler than the freaking purple sky.
She's trying to pull my headphones off right now.
I don't mean to be a buzzkill about it. I'm just saying it. It's cool. But it's like,
all right, let's wrap it up. You killed the mood.
Yeah, I just figured. It's like when somebody's like, hey, I got lots of fireworks, and all they have is firecrackers. It's like, cool. Still explosions, but I want the big stuff, the cool, nice one. Then
go to Alaska, I guess.
I want to go to Alaska. I want to do one of those Alaskan cruises and see the whales.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll take a backpacking trip across Northern West Territories in Canada, Nahanni Valley.
I don't recommend that.
Anyway, that it. Follow us, Instagram and Facebook, Country Roads Creeps. Be safe driving home. Watch out for the not deer and the white figures.
Bye.
And yeah, bye. Buckle your seatbelt.